You mean we're gonna die?
Yeah, right. When the meeting's dead. Yeah.
Okay, good.
As of course, now I started recording and they hear the end of the joke at the
Yeah,
beginning.
when the meeting is dead. And the punchline was awesome. I mean, the joke
Right.
itself was awesome.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So the nun says $7, same as in town, right? Which is MASH. I'm not sure if it's a nun in the original. Yeah. Anyways, you wanted to get together and talk about animation. And I know we bantered back and forth a little bit on Mattermost. So what are your thoughts?
So what are my thoughts? And I think the animation was about weaving the world and the big fungus and the big quilt and those kinds of metaphoric, ambiguous metaphoric representations. And were you through to the end of this morning's call?
I had to leave a little early, so no.
Okay, so you didn't watch me. You didn't watch me present the sheets of the layered diagram of OGM.
No, but I did see that on the Build OGM call.
But so you saw that on Tuesday. Fabulous.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah. So I don't know if you probably hadn't had any time to rework it. So I think I saw the whole thing.
Okay, good. So I haven't reworked it, and Pete and I were kicking around. Hey, if I wanted to draw that, like what drawing tool would I use? And I'm like, do I go to SketchUp? That seems like overkill. And last time I downloaded SketchUp, it had turned into a monster. It was like huge, right? It was just like this many-headed hydra. Like that seems like overkill. So I'm trying to figure out what I would love to be able to do is have, and this may in fact turn out to be animation, but I don't think so. Have like 5 or 6 layers of the model, and then be able to play 3-dimensional chess viewed from all around. Which is why I'm thinking of some kind of 3D modeling tool. But really what I want is very decent vector graphics. And Pete was like, just use Procreate, on your iPad to draw. And then he's like, yeah, but that's also just bitmaps, right? Procreate is not vectors.
Oh, yeah.
And Procreate is lovely, and Procreate does layers, which is good. But it doesn't really do vectors, which I really kind of want, because I kind of want, what I really want is for this animated thing to be clickable, so that the little circle that contains, a couple words, you click on it and you actually go to a website, or you go somewhere else, or whatever. And short of early on image maps, that's kind of hard to do with bitmaps. Anyway, because this like 5 or 6 layered model has interconnections between them, I think that the relationships are interesting. And then I want to be able also to pick up and add and move things. And ideally, really ideally, the layers might be tied to external databases like Trove or something else, or a Miro board or whatnot. Miro, it turns out, I think, doesn't do layers.
No, it definitely does not. So I'm working with Max, who you also know.
Yeah.
He and I are doing contract work for large corporations, connecting Miro to Airtable and other things. And we have actually explored building a plugin to do layers, but it's pretty slow because it has to do a round trip to their database. So like we actually do have tools where you can take a group of objects and turn them on and turn them off. And there might be something you can do with frames, but it's not something I would recommend for this, unfortunately.
I'm on board. And Mural is less powerful and not as interesting, or have you checked out Mural much?
Yeah, so we're doing a lot of work in Miro.
No, not Miro, but Mural.
Mural.
MURAL. It's a competitor. It's like the competitor to Miro.
Yeah, I looked at it. I can't not remember what.
And I haven't had to use Mural in a while, so I don't really know if it has any of the programming interfaces, the APIs and other sorts of stuff. I don't think it does. And I don't think it has layers, but I'm not sure, which is why I'm asking. So let's find out. Does Mural have layers? I will ask the Oracle that knows everything.
Right. The other option I was thinking is maybe diagrams.net, which can be done through Google Drive.
And Pete is a fan of diagrams.net, and I have not looked at diagrams.net.
I don't remember if it had layers or not.
Enough. Yeah.
I thought it did, but
well, doesn't diagrams.net have a whole family of different kinds of diagrams?
Yeah, but it's all still dragging around
in 2 dimensions.
vectors. Yeah, so it's just a lot of templates. It's still just 2-dimensional. And I'm thinking, I don't think there's anything that would get you to your full expressiveness that you want without some custom code.
Yeah.
So I was even thinking like Blender, which is a full 3D modeling tool, but it's really too complex.
And Pete
to pick up
recommended
quickly.
looking at Unity,
Yeah, that would
which
be
is also way overkill. It's like using an elephant gun,
right.
to shoot a mosquito.
Yeah.
And
See, if
but just Julian is pretty prolific. I mean, really prolific in Unity, for example. So maybe that's a thought.
Yeah, and I'm pretty prolific with Blender and with D3JS. I don't know if that means anything to you.
Heard of it, yeah.
Yeah, so that's just a JavaScript library for building websites that have a lot of control and adding a 3-dimensional kind of physics. I was wondering also whether you'd want it to be slightly physics-based, because you do have links between the layers and you want things kind of grouped together. I don't know if in your ontology there are things that cannot, like you'll need lines between the layers, because one thing on one layer needs to be connected to 2 things on the other layer, and they may be on other sides of the screen. I mean, I know you want to group them, but
yeah, you're totally right. Well, for instance, one person like you're connected to Flotilla and to this and to this and to this. There's easy reasons why there'd be multi-layered, multi-connections. So totally.
So diagrams.net does have layers, and I'm pretty sure you can turn on and off their visibility. But whether it wouldn't give you the 3D. So it'd only take you so far. Let me just share my screen so you can see it.
Thanks. Yeah.
Did I share the right one? Are you looking to see?
I'm seeing a tool. I'm seeing a control panel for EOS Rebel for your camera. Your camera.
Wrong one.
Yeah, wrong window.
Share. Switch to what screen I use. Or is that better?
Yep.
So like they have the little layers that docks over there. Anyway, so if we take that, and then we add a layer, then I want to, actually I haven't played with this enough to know, but
to move things between layers, you mean?
Yeah, I guess let's you know what?
This might be a start of something.
Yeah, go ahead. I wonder if something. Let's see. Okay, that's on the background. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know why it's throwing everything on one layer. So I mean, I could play with this some more. It should be doable.
So drawing, and this is vector graphics, right? Yeah, these are all objects.
And what's great is you can also export this as PDF or SVG, so that you can take it into another application and
awesome. And can you add links to objects?
Yes. I don't know how good they are.
Where's our little anchor icon gone?
Yeah. I thought you could. Text.
Situation.
Yeah, it's an old style interface. Like most of these, they they were written before Apple really got big. They started that way.
Yeah, and Inkscape hasn't modernized, has it?
They keep them. It's gotten actually better in the last couple years.
Oh, that's good.
And I guess it has layers too.
My
It's just
memory of it was
this
that it
is
was
also online, so you could share it as is. Now,
exactly.
it won't be easy for people to turn on and off the layers, but then later, someone could take it and it'd be fairly easy to take and
Yeah. So my poor man's solution, and I don't even know how to do this, but my poor man's solution is to do 5 diagrams in something like this, diagrams.net. Just do 5 diagrams using vector graphics, and then later I can come back and edit them and move them around. But then export them maybe as PDFs or even JPEGs or something, and then drop them into some 3D environment where I can make them images that I can stack. Basically, make a plane multi-plane camera view out of those drawings and somehow lock them together in a rectangle, in a cube, and then I can rotate it, explain it, talk around it, because part of this is there a semi-fancy way to do an animation with the actual live diagrams explaining this thing, some of which represent project ideas and a project dashboard, some of which represent individuals and organizations they belong to, the whole thing, right? That would be pretty cool.
Yeah, I would think that the best tool for that eventually, well, okay, I was going to say Blender, but the problem with Blender is that it's not a real-time viewing. Actually, the best thing would probably be D3 or some of the virtual reality stuff. The quality is getting really good.
Oh, VR AR is interesting too. Separate but related. A new friend was doing tablet applications that are really interesting, and he is sold on Flutter as basically a 2-dimensional graphics engine that gives you lots and lots of freedom from what to build. And he sort of wants to build a whole new OS using Flutter. OS layer using Flutter, and would like it to be kind of visual like the brain kind of thing, which is what got us started talking. And a multi-plane camera that you're just sort of looking at and rotating could be rendered in 2D. I mean, if you had an engine that knew how to do a little bit of perspective, you could kind of move that around. You could just sort of mess with it lightly.
And honestly, nowadays, plain HTML, there's just some CSS you can do to where if you have several JPEGs, you can put them on a 3D plane and rotate it.
And tilt and rotate?
Yeah, so the thing is, though, they would need to be, and actually you can do that with SVGs too. So one of the problems is, though, when you start rotating it like this, the images will go sideways, so it'll be harder to kind of read the text.
Right.
So you'd only want to do it like, a little bit greater than 45 degrees. And then you'd probably want them to be semi-transparent.
Right. Well, I think the notion, I think the imagination I'm having is that you're rotating just sort of to see the relationships, and maybe you can or can't read the text at that moment, but then you're snapping to one of the full diagram layers, and it's going 2D. It's basically going 2D. And then if you can sort of bump up and down through the 2D layers, you might actually compound a couple layers. So, entities plus people is an interesting compounding of 2 layers. That's easy. And then to imagine the tile pieces, the project tiles as pieces of the mosaic of the vision, then you drop the projects on top of the entities, on top of a roadmap or something like that, maybe, right? Although the roadmap doesn't map nicely to the entities so much.
Right.
It might map better, but it doesn't right now from what I've done. Because each layer is trying to achieve some kind of layer consistency or integrity, but I'm also trying to draw interlayer correspondences and integrity as well. And that's sort of hard.
Yeah. So yeah, if you want that full functionality, it's gonna take someone like me or like I forgot who's doing the VR work.
Julian?
Yeah, Julian.
And also Fallon.
Yeah. So it'd have to be one of us kind of doing it.
So this could also be a program. This could also be a project to. I mean, so this is just a piece of imagination in my head that feels like it could be really darn useful, but I've never heard anybody else ask for it. So maybe it's just like a dumb thing to ask for. But if it's an interesting thing to ask for, then it's a fundable project tile for OGM, right? And I would slip this in there. And if we got somebody to pour some money into it, then we can actually hire you and whoever else you think ought to be doing this to create a general purpose version and drop it in the comments. That'd be great.
Yeah, that's interesting. I'd wonder how many, I mean, a lot of our data is kind of like multiple layers of information. There's not a good way to visualize that right now in a reusable way. Going from a single kind of prototype where you're just navigating over it and someone kind of hard coded the things in there, and then going to something that has a UI where people could drag and drop things in the different layers, that would be a function step in cost and funding needed.
Also, I was searching for Prezi has so disappointed me that I started searching for Prezi alternatives, and I found a thing that I was really hopeful for, and I'm like, oh, cool. And it turns out that you have to draw objects in some other tool, and they recommend Inkscape. Then once you've drawn them, the only thing this program does is it lets you declare a path between the objects, and it'll basically zoom you from object to object. That is the only feature of this program. And I'm like, oh my God, whoa. And then I was like, well, oh my God, whoa, what if these tools, and I don't know why tools don't do this more, what if these tools interacted actively so that when you came to the drawing and just wanted to start editing it, the other tool would basically take over, let you stay in the visual context of the rotating, whatever singing and dancing tool, but then kind of let you actually make changes and then flip focus back to the storytelling tool. And do you know of anything that does that?
No.
Okay, good. So that's another miss.
Right. Well, yeah, or a hit if you want to think of something interesting for people funding, because think of a VR Prezi, right?
Right.
Is really what we're talking about.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, this is a junk phone call for car warranty. Like, why is this a thing? Why is like car warranties spam such a big thing right now?
Because the automobile dealership sells the list. The car warranty companies then hire third-party people to do the calls. The third-party people spam everyone and give deniability to the insurance companies.
Wow.
Because I actually talked through their first level support and got to their second level support. And I said, you called me. He said, no, you signed up somewhere. I said, no, I bought this car 10 years ago, that you have all my car info. And you've called me every day this week.
Wow.
And I finally decided to answer it and got to it. And I found out the company they were, and I did a Better Business Bureau complaint on them. And I'm like, you need to figure out what's the company you're paying, because you're paying someone. The money's coming from you.
Yeah.
Anyways, so I got in a big, that's another project that we need to fund, is a whole bunch of people from third world countries to intercept these calls and pay them the more money that they tie up.
Yeah, exactly.
There are
eat up their resources.
There are 2 AI companies that try and keep them talking as long as possible.
Love that. Good. So now we have 3 difficult projects.
Right.
So let's ignore all this stuff about what magical tools. The 2 tools we've just described are things I would love to see exist, and I could use very easily.
Yeah.
So for me, a piece of what's missing here is when I go into my brain and I go to current members of Congress, current representatives is a thought I have, right? Clearly that should be a database lookup. I mean, like it's just me, and they're moving people in and out and adding people as I bump into a new representative, and then I retire them out into former representatives, and I've got my own little manner for doing it, but it's clearly very fallible. Would be much better as a database lookup, but the brain, she don't do database lookups.
Yeah.
But other tools do very nicely, right?
And there is an open API for that data.
Yeah. Fred or whatever, right? There's the federal. Yeah, there's several federal sort of systems that have lots of interesting info you can tap into in APIs. But there's a bigger interesting issue here, which is, what if all these different tools were projecting or rendering into a Blackboard space, a shared space? and had some connectivity at the nodes wherever they were projecting into, so that the brain could sort of hand off at that node and say, hey, other thing that makes tables that come from database lookups, present that here, but still make that available to me. And then as we moved into a systems diagram, I could then say, hey, Kumu tool, use this space over here to draw a beautiful Kumu diagram and make it interactive in the space. I don't know. I may be asking too much, but I may also be, it feels like we're stuck in the desktop metaphor.
Yeah.
It feels like desktop metaphor was a great leap forward from command interface, unless you talk to like 5 friends of mine who love the command line interface.
Right.
But desktop, took us a long, long ways, and now it's keeping us back from actually thinking together. And this idea that we have apps that have private data within the app and that don't interact with each other or interoperate with each other feels to me like a very, very tired thing now. So I'm trying to figure out what does an environment look like where these things can interact? And I'm inspired a wee little bit by things like Jupyter Lab.
Yeah.
What does an open Python capable browser notebook look like, where you can just kind of call stuff up, although they all scroll up. It's not like it's an interactive space to play Python in. It's sort of like there's a command line Python system buried on, a real-time Python system running under the hood, sort of, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and there's a lot of other kind of waves in that space. So we're getting a lot of no code ever since If This Then That and Airtable and all these other things coming up that are starting to make it to where a non-technical person can connect to an API and receive data. And then we're starting to get some visualizations. So what was I forgot the, I might be able to pull it up, but there's a new kind of visualization website that Vincent was playing around with a while ago. And he actually wanted me to get some data out of Golibot so he could try and visualize it.
Mm-hmm.
So if you combine those two technologies to where someone says, I want to use this visualization, this bar chart or whatever like that, but I want to point it at this API, kind of take a look at the data and see if you can figure out, and I can have buttons to change what columns it's pivoted on. Then yeah, but I guess though that's kind of separate from the other thing what you're talking about of being able to visualize these layers, because that would be one of the potential things that would be data driven maybe. And I was thinking it'd be nice if you were collecting this in something like the brain, except the associations were, so you could tag things and say these are organizations and these are people and this person belongs to that organization. And then we could use VR and physics simulations so that it would, it'd kind of pop into space and then kind of, move together and slide around like a lot of the 2D visualizations do.
Yeah.
It'd be interesting to also kind of make it to where somehow the text, I almost am thinking like, no matter which way you're looking at it, rather than being a cube, a 3D cube, it would be, a square box that would always aim at wherever the camera is.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know if that would be awkward.
Another way to think about it is that we're actually in a 3D virtual world, whether it's a game engine or some other kind of thing, right? Or an Oculus thing or whatnot. And then now and then it behooves us to skinny that down to 2D because we're going to work on a thing, a document, a drawing or whatever, or a simple 2D diagram. And that the elegant ability to sort of slip back and forth between 2 and 3 dimensions would be super useful. Yeah. And I remember years ago, I was at a conference and they were like, oh, the next speaker is going to, do a document conferencing in some VR space. And I had to go take a call, but I tapped into the chat because we had a chat going. I was like, oh, goody, here's it's going to take like 10 minutes for the person to get in and go stand in front of the document and start trying to use it, and it'll be awkward and you won't be able to see it properly. And it's like, that's exactly what happened. Yeah. It was awkward and clumsy and a stupid use of all of the technologies involved. And I don't think it's gotten much better. Like Facebook now has Facebook Horizon meetings or something like that. Where they're trying to say everything's going to go into VR, and I'm like, Looks dumb to me. And a piece of what I want to say in opposition is, hey, let's forget about trying to map our faces and all that stuff into the space. Our voice carries enormous emotional valence. Let's actually carry our work documents and our memories and our shared ideas into the space. And that doesn't require pretty, fake chairs and fake conference tables. It actually requires interesting imagined spaces where our information lives. Right. And partly I'm inspired here because NYU, the ITP, the Interactive Telecommunications Program, at the start of lockdown, one of their students basically went and created a simulated ITP, a couple floors in the building in New York, online. And then they all started doing sort of poster sessions and whatnots, and little videos on podiums that roll around, like fake beam telepresence inside of a fake rendering of their space. And it looks really inert. You're like, why would you emulate your space? I mean, I know why you'd emulate your space. You miss home and it makes you feel like you're there. But boy, are there more interesting things to do.
Yeah.
Right? And we don't have that space to plan. Anyway, this is sort of a flight of fancy, sort of a wishful thinking, like maybe this is on the longer term wish list thing. But I'd be happy to return to the animation and storytelling part of the reason we're here, unless you want to stay on this one.
Nope, wherever you'd like to go.
Is there anything else that you want to drop into the conversation we're in right now?
Just thinking that I'm trying to think if it's worthwhile doing I guess the diagram that you've already created with the multiple layers. How much work and what's a fidelity level that would be valuable to make this either a showable prototype of what this future interface could provide, and is it worth that
So given a couple hours, I could turn, these are the two sort of more complicated diagrams in the deck. A couple hours in McDraw, or the equivalent of McDraw, right? Because I still miss McDraw. And I'd have these drawings up good enough, right?
Yeah.
Individually in like Google Draw even.
Yeah. So either
or diagrams.net.
Yeah, which is available in Google Drive, by the way. I don't know.
Yeah,
you're a Drive user, right?
I guess it connects to Google Drive. It's not
so you can actually create one inside
on Google Drive.
Yeah,
I didn't know that.
If you install, it's kind of a plugin. Let me show you.
Oh, fascinating! I didn't know that. Because I saw that it was using Google Drive, and that's where I've pointed mine, but I didn't know that you could start from there.
So hopefully I won't show too much of my personal folder structure. But if you let's go to
hit new. Yeah.
Yeah. I just gonna go
get into your temp folder. Good.
Yeah, which is even more secret. So if you go to new and you do more, I have diagrams.net here.
Oh,
along with all other things. And so I guess Connect More Apps is probably where you go to get.
That sounds great. I'll go do that
as an app. So if you try that, then yeah, you can start them right in there.
Hot darn, that's cool. I didn't know that existed. Thank you.
Sure.
Yeah. So a while ago, I was really frustrated. I just wanted something as simple as McDraw. And my theory on this is that Adobe with PageMaker and Illustrator and all those kinds of things just wanted to wipe out all the simple tools so that everybody had to go to the expensive ones.
So they bought them.
So they bought them and shelved them, just got rid of them.
Yeah, and I'm trying to think, there's a few Adobe tools that are free.
But Adobe involves like setting up to pay the Creative Suite every month. It's like that. That's basically your condemnation if you touch Adobe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, if you want to take the time to put them in some sort of SVG, so either diagrams.net or Inkscape, then it probably, I don't know how useful it would be, but it wouldn't be that hard. You could either share the diagrams.net, but it'd be awkward for people to turn on and off the things. But to create a simple website, and although I offered to do one of these for Vincent, I never got it done, is just to for me to take the SVGs and layer on top of each other and just get little buttons so we could turn them on and off. And then maybe we can also use the thing so that you could just drag and drop and it would just kind of do a little parallax dance.
Yeah.
So that's, 4 to 8 hours of time.
And I can imagine that would be pretty
Yeah,
sim-
I think it would, I
pretty
think it'd
doable.
still be helpful. And then maybe we just need to talk about that time being like something that I just record. And then if there's ever any funding comes through, then we could figure out a little bit of enumeration.
And Pete started a conversation about IOUs in OGM and stuff like that, which
an informal version of that.
Yeah, exactly. And then I like the idea, and I'm like, I don't know exactly what to do about it. Whether we just like find a community currency to store up with, or what. And then I'm just trying to figure out how to get funding.
I mean, right. But if it's just trusted people like me and Pete and stuff, then it could just be a spreadsheet but somewhere at the top of the spreadsheet it says no guarantee, not just some kind of legal things. This is not a legal binding contract, stuff like that, just so we keep everyone keep your expectations low. It's a bonus if it happens.
Exactly. And the way I imagine sort of this is only as far as that sort of thought through the IOU model, but it was, okay, great. So we'll still create a project plan around the thing that is now getting written under IOU.
Yeah.
And then as soon as the funding model gets filled and we get some funds, we'd like, okay, this one. And then we fill it up and say, oh, good, check, it's done. And then it cascades payment to whoever did the work. So it would kind of be accounted for in the system that we're envisioning here in some way. That'd be cool. Okay. So let's like scrub away the 5-layer model, because I think the animation part of it is much less about that, although probably the idea will creep back into the conversation. But the idea is sort of to try to describe, hey, and here metaphorically above ground on the surface, there's weaving the world, which looks and smells like a podcast or a vlog. And I'm actually confused right now. Podcast to me always meant audio only. And now it seems to include audio, video, audio, just the video that came out of, just the audio that came out of. What's the deal?
I'm trying. Yeah, it is both. It is used for both. A lot of times, people when they say podcast and there's a video involved, they're saying it's like a podcast, but I'm also hosting on YouTube, so you could look at us if you want.
Which doesn't really have a name though. It's like this hybrid creature.
So I'm going with vidcast.
Vidcast.
Yeah. So, and what's great about that is you lose the whole pod thing, because that came from frickin' iPod. Exactly. Apple doesn't even use it, although it's Apple Podcasts, I guess. Now, what is it? Apple, I guess they call it podcast. Did they?
They used to anyway.
I thought they decided to get away from the term, but now I'm thinking I don't know what they're calling it.
I don't know. And has the term vlog just vanished?
No, a lot of people still do vlogs, but it really means informal. So
a vlog is not a produced show.
Right.
Oh, I didn't know that.
That's the difference.
Okay.
I mean, actually, I don't know. If you talk about Hacksmith and Corridor Digital, their daily vlogs are actually produced. But most of the time it means informal. And if it is produced, it's still done very frequently and very quickly.
Yeah. I wonder like the Vlog Brothers, right? That's vlogging.
Right. And they edit their videos. They've been editing their breaths out of videos for 10 years now.
And they're really good at it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. They're like really good at it. I'd love to sort of get behind the curtain tour of.
So I guess I'm kind of wrong. I think it still has that kind of feeling to it, even though that's not kind of how it's used. So a vlog is like if we're doing a fully kind of, animation video and the type of stuff you do, I don't think a vlog, and the ones that you're talking about would also be kind of topical or subject related. And a vlog is really more like day in the life. So
yeah. Okay. So terminology aside, what I'm envisioning is that above ground, this looks and smells like your average, ordinary, run-of-the-mill vlog, vidlog, podcast, vidcast, whatever. Which means it has episodes, which are posted on places like YouTube and who knows where else. But then things get interesting, because first, in the run-up to each episode and during the episode, like in the run-up, I'm going to go visit people I've already got in my brain. That's like Makes total sense. Those are going to be the people I approach and want to have these conversations with. And then during the calls, like during this morning's call, I got half of the links mentioned in my brain. I had a bunch already. I added 2 or 3 while we were talking, and I just finished up the rest after the call. So I've got a nice brain mapping of this morning's OGM call already kind of done, right? And that's only like a first pass, and it's only from me, from the tool that I love. Wouldn't it be cool if there were a couple other people who were really interested in doing a similar kind of thing, like we did with the, what did I call it, the hoedown? The visualization hoedown back when. Somebody comes in with a different tool, and maybe we make a regular practice of it, and maybe those are paid positions as we start getting funding, but people come in and do annotation of different kinds. And over time, with wishful thinking again, the things that we create are actually linkable to one another, syncable, like when you're doing the links, and even with the regular Zoom chat, it's just a text file. It's not actually synced. I don't know if Smile or other kinds of video formats are usable or useful here, but wouldn't it be cool if any particular piece quoted, if you could go from the link and say, show me where this happened in the video, right? So basically backtrack into that snippet of the video where we talked about
YouTube,
that website.
I don't know if you know, or if you're talking about YouTube in the doobly-doo, the description, if you put a timestamp, it will link to that part of the video now.
Yes,
but it doesn't go the other way where it pops up during the video.
And you can put little markers in, and if you're the author of the video, you can put info cards, and there's like 3 or 4 different kinds of affordances.
I think they took the info cards out.
Oh, really? Info cards be gone?
They only have the end screen now.
Oh, so there's nothing in between?
No, so I think.
Oh, that sucks.
They're like keeping them legacy wise, but I think on future videos, not gonna, which doesn't make sense, because if you want to, or it's very, very limited. It's not as good as it used to be, but I think they took it out. But
interesting. Okay, something to investigate. But anyway, so partly there's like an elves workshop underground that there's some pre-work, some real-time filtering and associating and whatever, including so last night I had this lovely conversation with a woman who's a decolonization activist and is living in the Philippines, and super interesting, and trying to figure out, to listen to her and figure out how to help her and her communities. But she showed me a diagram toward the end of our conversation, which was beautiful. I'm like, that's really simple. It's visual. It's kind of organic. And I think I get what she's saying, but we were running out of time. And what I really wanted to do was slow the clock down and say, this piece over here, what do you mean? Oh, do you mean this? And then bring up something that I've created that tries to tell a similar story. And it's like, well, yes, but no, but this, and then elaborate on them or something. But basically, even the during, to not go as quickly as we go, and to come back and try to unpack and complexify and link and do the work during the call in some sense. And I think that's interesting. And then there's a workshop of elves who are working afterward doing post-production, everything from Max Harper's visualizing, who talked to whom during the call, to whatever else comes up. And in particular, either weaving the big quilt or sewing the big quilt, because you don't really weave a quilt, I guess. You weave a tapestry, and I haven't thrown in tapestry metaphors yet either, but they're really good here. Yeah. Or feeding, feeding the big fungus, tending or stewarding the big, farming the big fungus.
Yeah.
And so metaphorically, those are the things I'd love to explain in some kind of animation. And in the middle of the fungus, or early in the fungus thing, you've got to sort of tell a leafcutter ant story. Otherwise, it doesn't really make sense. Yeah. Right? It's not self-explanatory is the problem with the big fungus.
Yeah.
But once you've heard the 30-second version, or the 3-minute version, you're good. It's like, oh, okay, that, like, wow. Wouldn't it be cool if, like, if we were actually humans constructing a shared asset that could feed us all, right? And then also the big fungus is meant to be in the generative commons under the auspices of Open Global Mind, which is a hashtag, not an entity. Right. And the wishful thinking here is that other vlogs, podcasts, vidcasts, whatevers, then say, hey, this is really cool. We'd like to join you in feeding the big fungus, right? And so the fungus becomes this separate artifact in the commons that we helped sort of start, and the Internet Archive is already a sort of a big fungus. It's just not necessarily instrumented to be fungal, right? To feed the tribe. So then a piece of the workshop is, what do we need to make this whole infrastructure work better? And that's what the tiles in the mosaic are meant to represent. Is like, hey, here's a project that will take the transcripts from Zoom calls and make them more usable. Brilliant. Here's what it's called. Here's how it got funded. Here's where it fits in the puzzle pieces of basically the sort of in the puzzle piece of this diagram of like, so how do we get from an event to an artifact to an elaborated artifact to an artifact that's connected into the big fungus?
Yeah.
Right, that kind of thing. And that may be too many elements of story. So the thing I'm trying to do right now, by making calls to people who haven't heard this before and just like listening, is like, what's the simpler way to say this? Is this too many moving parts? How does this work? And I try really hard to simplify stuff, and this is as simple as I'm getting right now. I could skip the big quilt and just go straight to the fungus, which is great because that's one fewer metaphors to mix in. But then weaving the world works better with quilts than with fungi. Okay.
Yep.
It could be gardening the world or something like that.
I think if we look at all those things, if you look at it like a Venn diagram, there is some overlap, but I'm not sure that there's as much overlap as you feel.
An overlap between which things? Because I'm feeling lots of overlap between the big quilt and the big fungus, for example. It's just the metaphor is different, but the actions under the hood are the same.
So yeah, the tapestry, the quilt, and the fungus are all different ways of expressing the overall.
The shared
I almost
asset.
want to say business model / shared asset, right?
Yeah.
And then within that shared model business asset, one of the activities is the vlog, right?
Yep.
And then there's kind of this infrastructure piece that's way below all that says, what tools do we need to make the vlogging and the visualization easier, and then everything else in that big circle in the thing. I'm just thinking that a lot of times I think the picture is too big for anyone to take in one sitting.
Mm-hmm.
So and you've talked about this before. So the first layer is kind of the show. So I would say that we need to kind of pitch the show and mention somewhere slightly, and yeah, I see why you want to go to that level of depth every time, but I'm wondering if that should in general be like the second or third conversation about it rather than the first.
If it's only a podcast or vidcast, then there's millions of podcasts out there already. Who cares? How's this differentiated? Oh, we're going to interview more interesting people. No, you're not. Like, there's plenty of good interview series going on out there right now. Yeah. Lots and lots. So that's the thing that makes this recognizable as a thing. The aha, the light bulb is, we're going to take the artifacts left behind by this trail of activity and weave them into something that is beneficial to everybody. That's the big aha.
So, yeah. So a couple thoughts on that. One is, it might be interesting to see if we can partner with someone who already has a lot of interviews and do the animations on them, right?
Oh, interesting. So one of the things that struck me was, let's go find, we don't even need their permission. Let's go find anybody who's posting these things on YouTube. And that means that's already, lots and lots and lots of really good ones. Let's go post-process them. Right. And many of these, Google already auto-generates a transcript. If not, we can send it to AWS or Otter or whatever.
Right.
So there's a bunch of stuff we could do on that. And I was kind of hoping to start with our own series just so that we kind of have control over all the moving parts. But there's nothing stopping us from spending some effort on other people's really good episodes. Nothing.
Yeah. And Although if you're using their audio over the visuals, I think,
Are there copyright issues or what do you mean?
yeah.
Yeah,
And
likely.
YouTube maybe even identify it. And I don't know if they would block you or just give the monetizations to them, which we don't care about the monetization so much.
And I'm not actually adding or doing anything to their artifact on YouTube or Twitch or wherever it lives. Like not doing anything to it, merely pointing to it, which then
Yeah.
they should love the traffic. And then we're deconstructing what's happening in it. So we're doing quotes and all that, and hopefully fair use covers that.
Yeah, as long as you're not quoting substantial, enough where people, it won't substitute that thing.
Well, that we will rapidly cross that line because my note taking in my brain of a good book or a good article contains as much of the wisdom in it as I possibly can
So that's
represent.
Yeah, so that's why I think it would be better to
Do our
obtain
own.
permission. And there should be some people that are great that don't care, don't care to do any visualizations on it or other content. And then that would be the niche. It's not like any other blog, and it's not like Minute Earth, which has great visualizations.
Yeah.
Because we have 2 or 3 different types of visualizations, maybe all going on at the same time,
Exactly.
or weaving in and out of them, right? So that's the kind of unique piece. And then also, I would imagine that this content would be available offline, so they could watch during the thing. Certain parts of it might show you in the brain, and then there would be a way to link to that brain if people want to explore beyond the video.
Yeah.
Right.
Agreed. And I'm pretty sure there's a bunch of people out there making media who have a very open mentality about it, would be very cooperative, and we wouldn't have issues with them.
Yeah.
But also it's a good reason to just generate our own media.
Yeah, and it depends on, and it's not that hard to do. So I mean, like I think I suggested a while back, you just sit down with Jamie Joyce and talk to her about Society Library, and we have a great piece of content. Just with the people inside OGM and the people in your brain, like you said, that you feel like you could reach out to. It's not a huge lift to do a Zoom call, and because I think most of the actual visuals aren't that of the recorded interview isn't as important because so much other stuff will be going on. So I think that's all doable. I mean, other than picking a topic and then putting it in an OGM, picking a topic, I think just go ahead and do the interview and then post the video in an OGM channel and say, have at it. Is there anything else we need to do? Or do you want to have it more produced than that? I mean, eventually it'd be good to combine everything, I guess.
At some point, we need something like the conversation we were having earlier, which is like, what does the shared space of these ideas and representations look like? Right now, it's just like hyperlinks from one into the other, and maybe a table of contents somewhere else that lives on a wiki page or something that says, hey, here's all the relevant places that link through here, something like that. Simple enough, but that's a ways out. In the meantime, just doing some of this work would be great, and then we can along with our table of contents for each episode, we can point to any media that got created around this episode, right?
Yeah.
So here's our marker for this episode, and it includes Robert Best, who did this meta maps about it, and Max Marmer, who automated this part of it over here, and so on and so forth. And like that's an interesting start. Although it's geeky and it's not going to be that attractive as just a list of stuff people did.
I just had a thought about the future also, is that did you see during the Olympics, and I think there's a couple of football games where you can go to the website and you could see all the cameras and do your own control room?
No, I've heard of this for baseball way back when, where you can
they did it for baseball
cameras on
for a
MLB.
while.
Yeah.
And then I think for the Olympics, you could watch 2 or 3 at a time at one of the years. I don't know if they did this last year.
Yeah.
So it'd be interesting to do like that. Although I don't know that it'll be interesting to see during the whole conversation, will there be something visual going on? But it wouldn't be, so if you had a web page and we can run 2 or 3 YouTube videos at the same time in the same page and you can even make a generic play pause button that would play them all in sync. So that'd be interesting because I guess even if we didn't use our original content, the original person would be getting a view, and then we could have annotations popping up alongside the video. But
and you and I and Pete and anybody who was a graphic facilitator or something else could could do our own version of live notes during the event and could share it on our background, right? My machine is not fast enough to sort of do that as well as everything else I'm trying to do. But if I could boost the machine, then piece of cake for me to have my brain live behind me all the time on all these calls, so that if somebody wants to pin me, they can watch me during, and that's fine. They can turn me off, turn me on. That works okay. And then the question is, can we record several different streams of that happening? And is that interesting? Because suddenly you go from one video stream recorded to 6 or more for one event, which is kind of weird. Or do we want a compound window that has a grid view of anybody who happens to want to be a note taker and be included in the recording, which is interesting and sort of new, except you probably couldn't tell what any one of them was doing in a thumbnail view, right? In a Brady Bunch view. So it's interesting because as we start getting riffs on these things that are kind of live and belong alongside, how do you integrate them?
And I don't know if there's much value in doing it live. I mean, I think having you record your session while if you're watching the video is almost just as good as us all doing it in a meeting together at the same time. And some people, I think, for their content will want to pause and watch through it and do a more spend more time editing their content or producing their content rather than real time.
Yes. Back to the animation thought, I just had a tiny light bulb, animation light bulb go off, which was, in a normal podcast, what you have is you have a string of episodes, and each episode drops a video that goes onto a platform. And if you're lucky, they were industrious and they added some links to the description field where the thing lives. But otherwise, it has a permalink, which is great, and other people might link into it, but that's about it. That's the end of life for that thing. And so the visual I have is that thing, the drop is basically dropping onto the earth. And what we'd like to do with it is plant it, water it, and spike it with a little bit of fungus, right? To basically dissolve it into the nurturing soil that is the new, and I've got an essay I need to finish writing that says data is the new soil.
Yeah.
Right? Because I hate data is the new oil, can't stand it. But data is the new soil is really interesting to me. It's like, how do we create a fertile infrastructure of trustworthy, reliable, privacy protected data that lets us move civilization forward?
Yeah. So we have a lot of, I think, interesting ideas, and there's a few things that we could do, but I'm thinking, what's the minimum viable product? I mean, is if we have a video of a couple mappers and someone edits it together, the interview and mappers, and maybe moving to different mappers or showing them all on the screen, whatever works for that specific interview, and when the activity is happening in there, going to 2 screens and then putting the people in there because there's nothing much going on the visualization or whatever. Is just a video on YouTube with links to external content. Is that a good V1?
With a voiceover, basically explaining what's happening, you mean?
Well, I would, yeah, I guess what I was thinking is that it would be an interview where 2 people are talking, and then the visualizations would just be going on screen.
So it would be a replay of the episode, except you'd be, instead of seeing the talking heads, you would switch to whoever's visualization was more interesting at that part of the conversation.
Yeah, that's kind of the way I interpret
something like
it.
that. That makes sense. That makes sense. I'm also envisioning a storyboard of some sort where the story about what on earth is going on here is kind of told, with those video snippets dropped in as this is what it looks like. But that's more advanced. That's the 1.3.
Right. Yeah, that's what I'm thinking is that if we're going to build up, I think a passive viewing is good enough for a V1 because it shows multiple people doing visualizations at the same time. It's showing diverse visualizations that people have never seen before. And it's interesting base content, but giving the eyes a feast because sometimes we zone out because people think faster than people speak.
Yeah. So one easy way to generate that would be to pick a topic that is really juicy for whoever wants to volunteer to do this. Record a call where everybody has the topic at hand so they can prep and create whatever tableau they want to create with whatever tool they like. And then have each person record their own screen during the session so that we get clean, nice recordings of all the people who did their versions of a map.
Yes, so that would be real time. Another option would be you record a video over Zoom with someone and then you post it, and then over the
Ask
next
people
month,
to just do their own.
people do their own mappings, recordings, and we give them to one person to edit them together in a visually appealing way.
That's
A
true.
little bit
Yeah.
less organization, maybe
Yep.
not as fun.
I mean, we won't get to see the results until kind of the end in that sense. It
Yeah.
won't be a live conversation with multi-mappers. But
Well,
the
and
multi,
people, yeah, I mean, if we had a channel for it, people could post stuff as they're doing it.
yeah,
It'd be more of an asynchronous sort of meeting.
yeah. I mean, and I'd like to get somebody from the Cult of Rome to do the same thing as well.
And maybe I'm poo-pooing the live thing too soon. Have an option where when you're doing the interview, anyone can comment if they want to either do it live or just view it live and, you know, have a Q&A session or whatever like that. And then,
Yeah.
but people could be mapping live if their form of mapping works that way.
So I'm having a funny image of like a baseball announcer where you can pick multiple cameras of the producer in the booth during a sort of a calm, normal show episode. The producer going, Bentley's got like a fantastic rendition of the thing that we just talked about, and like, boom, here comes your anime, and they've got everybody's screen on because they're looking at what the third baseman is doing, right? And
So
they
yeah,
can
that's
switch around.
interesting. Getting the live reactions from the interviewer, interviewee, and maybe audience on the visualizations that are happening in real time.
Exactly, because watching like the esports stuff, I'm completely lost watching esports announcers, and they get so worked up and so excited, and I don't know whose spells and whose weapons do what to whom. I don't know what the sweep did. I don't know what the characters do. I'm completely blank on what's happening on the field, and as far as I can tell, everybody's swooping and killing everybody anyway. But they see the texture, and they're like totally as excited as a good, you know, Latin American soccer announcer during a game. But doing that over ideas sounds to me really funny. Like it's sort of tongue in cheek, but interesting. Anyway.
Yeah, part of me says that the visualizations usually should be fairly self-explanatory. I don't, unlike a game, but I could be wrong in that assumption, right? Because if you're doing the brain, maybe it is so for someone who's never seen it before, it looks like a whole bunch of lines and circles.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe, but I still kind of think that, you know, if you don't have time during the call to do it, you could later record a session of you putting the data in, pausing and playing the video. And then anytime you think that you need to describe, you know, oh, so I linked this up to an existing part of my brain that has this. Then you know, then the editor would be playing the video, and then somehow we need to transition to you know, especially if it's you doing the interview and the narration, then we'd have to do some sort of change. But
Yeah.
I don't know. You can actually cut it all together, and they just assume that you said it while the person was there. Anyways, but yeah, just have it to where whenever there's context needed, someone would come in and give the context to the introduction or context to the visualizations,
Right.
and then they could play and be interlaced. I have a feeling that the final format will vary depending upon the interview, because sometimes we'll spend a lot of time in one visualization will make sense, and the others don't have much to do, and other times they're all in parallel, and then you have to decide, do you want to explain them and show them both at the same time, or do you want to show one and then replay it with the other one or something like that?
And parts of this get kind of a little fractal because you can spin off and have a really good time just looking deeper into one particular part of the conversation in different ways. So that gets complicated, but interesting.
Yeah, I'm just thinking that it will be adding a lot of times. If you're just doing the interview, you could go off to a lot of different places. But if we're having such rich content come in, you may have to keep the total base content rather short so that you have time to explore the visualizations a little bit.
Yeah, it would also be very easy for me to just set a camera and do a screen capture during my post-processing. So, me hunting down the rest of the links, doing a little research, we could do a time lapse where it's just taking a screen cap every 30 seconds or something. That would be very interesting and easy to do post material. I could also narrate that kind of thing. One of the things that's different and interesting from using the brain, as opposed to, I think, even something like Roam, but I'm not sure because I'm not a Roam user, is that let me just go back here. So when I mentioned Calvin Ball in the call, I had Calvin Ball and Calvin and Hobbes and Infinite Games in my brain already, right? Yeah. And I have, in fact, when I was trying to analyze how Trump is winning, that Trump is in fact playing Calvin Ball. That was one of Trump's favorite tactics, which is this is a highly populated thought in my brain. Come on, dope beach ball. These are Trump's favorite tactics. Right. But I say all this because the act of weaving a thing that's happening right now into a history, into a context that is actually sort of durable and interestingly linky. So here's Calvin and Hobbes, my childhood heroes in fiction. I can go there. I've recorded a video about this. And then here's a bunch of Calvin and Hobbes stuff. Is different from taking contemporaneous notes that happen to have lots of links in them.
So I mean, what I think would be interesting if someone's watching a video and seeing you do that, and then they see in the video that you have Trump next to Calvin, that they may find that interesting, and then they would go to the link and go to it. But I don't know if it'd be worthwhile. There's too many threads really to explore that in the video. Yeah. Now, if we had, if YouTube, if they've actually turned off the clickable annotations, then a later version could be during the visualizations, we could overlay over the video active links that could then you could click, you could pause. Right. And
exactly, you could
explore,
follow this.
Right.
You could have I guess it's Amazon Prime where you can hit pause and it has an X-ray feature where it shows you all the actors in the current scene.
Yeah, right.
You could do that for lots of different sorts of things. That's pretty nice. I like that feature a lot. It's like, wait, who's that?
Yeah.
And when you pause, it gives you that. It's really smart.
I was just thinking there was an actor I saw, and I'm like, is that? And I couldn't remember which actor he was. I gotta look that up.
Yep. So back to the simplest thing that could possibly work. So I bought weavingtheworld.org, I think .org, Weaving the World, sorry. And I bought the bigquilt.org and I bought the bigfungus.org, and there isn't much on them, right? So yeah. I think one piece of this is, okay, great. What should these sites say? So that as we start this thing, we can put those links in the YouTube upload description and let people sort of alert people to what this is and how to play with it. Once we have 2 episodes in the bag and somebody's done a little bit of post-processing and whatever, a whole bunch of issues about this are going to bubble up that we can solve. Like, where does the ancillary matter go? Do we build a wiki that goes with the website that holds all, a page for every episode? Makes kind of sense.
Yeah.
How do all those things sort of work together? But the simplest thing, I think, is to start doing the shows and to put pretty simple prose on the couple websites that matter here that describe the process and the operation.
Yes. Now, I would challenge you to, you're going to have to decide on which metaphor you want to go with first.
Pick one.
Yeah. You got to kill your other children.
Yeah. I think it's the fungus. I think the fungus wins.
I think go for it, man. Go with your gut.
Mhm.
You're thinking marketing wise, the other ones make sense, but I think you go with your gut. It's not going to kill it if we choose the wrong one and switch in a couple
Exactly.
months, right?
Exactly. It doesn't. It
Go with
doesn't
the weird
hurt
one.
that much. Go with the weird one. The weird one, memorable one. Yeah.
Yeah.
That whole thing. Cool. Okay. So any ideas you have about what to say, how to explain this are totally welcome. Because I started sitting down at the sites and I was like, oh, blank sheet of paper, not sure exactly what to say here. And I started getting into sort of scripting like a video to explain it, and then that stalled.
I think it'll be more interesting. So one of two things. One is someone just interviews you, or you do one of your videos about the idea, and then we put that in, we put it out to thing and say, tell all of our mappers, go and create a map for this, and then someone like me edits it together, and that's the first video.
So
And don't worry about the text.
Yeah. A different way of thinking about this would be, oops, I'm not screen sharing. A different way of, you just inspired me to say, hey, I have a lot of videos I've already done that are extremely linked, that are really link rich. So for example, I don't know if you saw, but I did 3 videos about the global financial crisis of 2008, 2009.
Right.
And they're called SNP because my thesis here is that we snipped long-term relationships that were keeping the financial system more or less in balance. And once we snipped them, like all bets were off. We could just, go crazy. So these are the nodes of insights that are in the text of the videos, except that we snipped laws that kept banks from speculating should be linked to the destruction of Glass-Steagall. So here's foreclosure Phil broke Glass-Steagall so that traveler Sandy Weil could eat Citibank, making all banks risk takers. And suddenly there was no such thing as a savings bank or a separate little bank that was restricted in what it could invest in. That was a brilliant move. Like that was brilliant because it exposed everybody's savings everywhere. It took away, and in the meantime, there's still FDIC, guarantee. So the government is, what's it called? The government put. Have you heard of this?
Yeah. Well, no, but it makes sense. I mean, all these people took risky behaviors because they knew they were protected.
Yeah, the government put. This is like a brilliant thing. It's like put options, right? So too big to fail, the government put. You're just going to bet on the government bailing you out. And if you get everybody to put their money in, the government's going to show up and fix it.
Yeah.
And they do. So what I'm saying is I already have produced videos that I've already woven into the big fungus. This is my version of that big fungus.
Right.
It may be too much to ask other people to take a riff.
The starter fungus.
Exactly. This is the starter fungus, precisely. So I may have done too much to make it interesting or enticing for other people to come in and riff on it, use other tools, connect up to it. The brain is not easily linked to, right?
I don't think you've done too much. I mean, really, because the genesis is the video.
Yeah.
So I would say pick one of the video, because if you do all the videos, everyone will be scattered.
Right.
Pick one video. I would hopefully do something a little bit more current than that one.
Yep.
And then I would say just put it out to the channel and say, to the mapper channel, and say, hey, what we want to do is we want to do a compilation video of people doing graphical and mapping interpretation of this video and edit them together in a visually interesting way. And just record your stuff, throw it up on YouTube in an unlisted link, or list it, we don't care. And share it in here, and we'll have someone edit it together.
And I think a piece of the mission description here is anyone can take like any segment of what shows up here and riff on it. So if there's a little piece of it, a scene from The Big Short that lit a bulb in your head that you'd like to draw as a cartoon, and that's it. That's all you really want. That is fabulous. Yeah. Like that's a fabulous addition to this. And then once it's done, I will link back to it in my brain so that the next rev of this has that woven into my context as well as the other stuff that we're building.
Yes. Yep. I think that's great. I had another thought while you were saying that.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, yeah. And I think as a couple people do, I think just explain that. And people will get the message. You don't have to do the whole video, any single
Exactly.
part of it.
Any part, this is
Oh,
like, go ahead.
I was going to say what I'm visualizing this kind of community and just this small part of the experiment, not your whole grand vision, is this is kind of like a Kirkazat or a I forget, Minute Earth, those animation studios, except instead of being a studio, it's a loose group of individual practitioners collaborating together. And then we'll also be kind of showing the future of work, right? And the future economy. And then we could do videos on the video project on the website.
Exactly. And it can all be sort of self-referential, right down to the last
Mhm.
turtle.
Yeah, right. Which there's no last turtle, of course, but
Well,
because it's bottom, turtles all the way down, right?
it's true. It's true. If only Borges had done a short story about the turtles. Cool. And sorry to eat up more than an hour. This has been super fruitful.
Yeah, that's good.
Thank you. So I guess I need to like finish putting something on the websites and then pick a video that's newer than that.
Well, so yeah, I mean, I don't know that you even need to put anything on the website. I think if you pick a video, I mean, honestly, Vive01, I think is just a YouTube video with a very filled description. Do you think you need the website for 01?
Website not essential, but not hard to do.
No.
And my ulterior motive here is to actually approach funders and say,
Oh, right.
we have a thing here that I'd like to pour some money into. It's a little complicated, but here's sort of what the moving parts look like already.
Yeah. Well, I think it'll be easier for you to craft that wording and others to help you with the crafting of that wording once we've either done one or we're 50% through one.
Yeah.
So I would say pick a video, throw it in the mapping channel. Let's get some people contributing some video snippets.
Yeah.
And even if it's the short edit and not, the full thing, then as you see content come in, I think that will inspire you on what to say and how to say it. And then whenever you feel like you have something, then throw it up on just the fungus site. And then that would be the the top link in the YouTube video, but also would be the landing page. And I guess really if right now that landing page is for potential funders, then maybe you need to once you introduce it, maybe a couple people done a couple videos, then you have a call with me and Pete and others and a couple other people that would be really good at figuring out the wording for that website. And also maybe when you post this, say also we're going to have a website to try and get some funding. What text would you put? And maybe put a Google Doc or a HackMD up,
right,
and let people just kind of, as they're doing it, submit suggested text, because that can be difficult. I do think that I think I could use, so I use my StoryBrand format where it's you say, don't you hate it? That is the first sentence of something, right? And then you say, so you outline the problem, and then you have like 3 bullet points and an action on how we're going to do that, and then you can expand the bullet points and go into more detail. I'm starting to think that those words are forming in my head. So that's, if I was doing the project plan, that's what I'd do. I'd say choose a video, post it, ask for people to create videos, graphically analyzing it or contributing to it, ask for text wording, and then when we either get that first video in the can or shortly before, throw up the website.
So,
I just think you'd need to be able to do the first one on spec or on volunteer.
yeah. So 3 ideas, and I think I have a preference here, and like these are not the only ideas, of course, but one is I really like those global financial crisis videos. I think they're really rich, but they are a little dated. But I like them a lot because they just, a lot of people have thought about it. We also, it's far enough back in the rearview mirror that we have some context about it. Second thought is going to some hot thing of right now, which is like emerging event sense making around the Delta variant. Right now, basically do something that's live and hot, pulling out of Afghanistan, a little political, women's rights, I don't know what, but something like that. Third option is to take a juicy question of the moment, which for me is that weird, what are the next two stacks question? Have you heard me talk about this?
Yes. I've
So
forgotten it though, but that's
what is the new societal stack and what is the new organizational stack?
Right.
We're disgruntled with liberal democracy and neoliberal liberal democracy and globalization and capitalism. So okay, great. So post capitalism, what? And then we're not that happy with the C corporation and the predatory instincts of killer capitalism within companies. We think companies are too militaristic and top down. Holacracy, hierarchy, sociocracy, digital I don't know. Like exploring that space is like, to me, a big juicy question where we're not going to have satisfying answers right now, but the process of collective inquiry could be really good. It cues up a series of really interesting interviews, and it cues up a nice direction for a theme for 6 months of Weaving the World, for example, right? And I haven't created the video that asks the question, but I could. It's on my way too long to-do list of things I'd like to do because I haven't made a video in multiple months. So I would love to actually sort of take a swing at what are the two stacks. Easily persuaded to do a different topic, but that one seems to be difficult, juicy, interesting to a lot of people, open to lots of different riffs and versions on what, if some DAO blockchain fan wants to come in and say the future is Ethereum and here's how, and they can do it in a comprehensible way, that'd be awesome. I tried to read a couple posts about adaptable bonding curves or whatever that was. Yeah. I'll be damned if I understand any of that crap. It was all written in Greek with like Cyrillic subtitles. It was weird.
So my recommendation on where to start is, first of all, take the suggestion on do something more recent with a big grain of salt.
Okay.
Feel free to go back to those, especially if you like them. If you can't decide, flip a coin and let's just move fast and break things like Facebook, because that's our idol, right? No,
another thing to do, which might be really interesting and is also current, would be to pick a big issue like Black Lives Matter or Me Too or Indigenous tribes around the world being squished. Pick something that lets us be of service to other people and try to tell and retell those stories and use that as feedstock. Yeah.
And there's also quite a few people in our community that are already creating videos like that, right?
Yes. And ask them to link those in and then riff on those, deconstruct, reconstruct. Yes, exactly.
So I think for since you're the initiating passion for this, I think you just pick a video you like, either one of yours or someone else that doesn't have a lot of visual content now and is just talking heads or one person doing a presentation, and let's throw it in either the Maps and Mapping or our new channel and say, hey, let's and just kind of throw out the experiment as we said and see what happens.
Yeah. Cool. Okay.
But don't be too precious about it, otherwise it'll never happen.
Yeah, I know.
You know how that is.
I know way too well how that is.
I mean, well, I guess this would make it harder. Ask people to suggest videos, but no, that'll just no. Yeah,
that just cascades out of control. Yeah. Cool. And a bunch of other things came up. Like I'm trying to read Tyson Yunkaporta's Sand Talk, and it's not that it's a bad book; it's a great book. My problem is that every page has like really interesting stuff that makes me stop and go and feed my brain and do other stuff. I'm like just not getting through it very much. But it makes me also think maybe to take a short interview that's just two people between two ferns on, that's available on YouTube. Just take an interview and then start elaborating, illustrating, mapping it right? Take some neutral, simple thing and make it better by weaving it into the world. That could work too.
Yep.
And maybe some of the Weaving the World show is going out and doing fresh interviews with interesting people who are trying to fix the world. But maybe another complete thread in Weaving the World is taking existing media that fits, that has something interesting to say that hasn't been noticed, and making it shiny and bright and fitting it into the bigger picture. That sounds really useful to me.
Yeah.
So basically making arguments out of found objects and making them better, sort of a found art dialogue.
Yeah. Yeah. I think both of those paths are equally and they can overlap and flow,
And they totally weave into each other. Exactly. We could even spark some of the original conversations around a couple artifacts of media that, people do that all the time. But we could start it in a really dense and interesting place by having pre-mapped for a conversation and then improving the map during the conversation.
And once we do our first one, throw it back out there and say, everyone, this is remix culture. Take anything we do and splice it, dice it, whatever you want.
And I don't know why I've got so long to get to this point in my head, but the thing I'm aiming for in Weaving the World as a show is that little rectangle in the middle of this drawing, which is where different people show up with different maps and compare and contrast their ideas. Like that's what the show could become, right? The show is basically battle bots for people with ideas. Totally kidding about battle bots, but
I love battle bots. So do you think that there's a show where people watch the source video, do their own maps, and then it's a recording of people showing off their maps, either breaking into well, I guess we also talked about voiceovers. I don't know. I guess what we need to do is put out a sort of video and then feel our way through how we will add and how we will weave that video into the rest of the world, right?
Yep.
That's really what it comes down to. And we're just starting with the seed of a video, but later on it could be a seed of, oh, here's someone's graphic. Let's make a video about the graphic, right? So yeah, so I think find a source seed to put in the new soil, right? And water it, and we'll just come together as a group and either asynchronously or synchronously weave it. And then we could also do a meta video about the weaving it, kind of behind the scenes.
Behind the scenes, the making of the fungus.
Right.
I like it. Has a ring to it.
And maybe we'll make it to where you weave the fungus. I don't know.
You can have a fungus blooper reel.
Right. Yeah. So yeah, let that all sink, and then just find an example seed, and it doesn't have to be perfect. And maybe a new channel rather than putting it in the mapping and stuff is my suggested path forward.
I'm thinking starting a new channel called Weaving the World.
Although is that going to be confusing if the final thing is fungus?
Well, Weaving the World is the show, and the Big Fungus is the commons artifact that we're creating. Okay. And the channel could be either, but I feel like it maybe ought to be the show. And maybe there's a separate channel called the Big Fungus where we talk about what does it mean to have this as a commons artifact? How does this relate to the generative commons? How do we tend it? How do we make it popular? How do we get other people to feed it?
I think you need to start with one of those two.
Yeah.
So maybe Weaving the World as this thing to where we take a piece of content and we weave it into other things.
Right. Yeah, I think that's a good starting point.
And and I just think YouTube's Google, but I think that's the easiest place to get started, and then we can move out. There's lots of other video platforms nowadays too. Or our own, eventually our own website where we'll be playing videos from whatever source, whether it be Vimeo or what some of the other stuff. And then we have the interactive media interactive with the video content.
Right. Makes sense.
Hopefully you found this helpful.
Brain exploding. Yeah, super helpful. Yeah. Thank you.
And if you do get inspired to put your diagrams in 3D, the least in vector, separate vectors, the least I could do is do for what I promised to do for Vincent and make a simple website where you can upload vector graphics. It'll lay them on top of each other, and you can turn them on and off.
Yeah. Does diagrams.net have an iPad version?
I have no idea.
It may work in the browser, which I'm about to try right now. So I'll just log into
Yeah, I mean,
diagrams.net.
it was originally written before drag and drop on big websites, so I mean, give it a try. But yeah, we've only had one iPad in this house, and I don't know where it is, so
Yeah.
I'm not sure
Start.
what vector iPad tools or websites.
Flowchart maker, save diagrams to Google Drive, authorize.
I just don't know if you'll be able to drag things really well on the button.
Yeah,
buttons are very small.
what I'm looking for is to be able to use my pen, right?
Oh, okay. Yeah.
But actually in diagrams, you're just dragging and dropping anyway. So I think it doesn't matter as much. I'm not really
Right.
drawing.
Yeah.
Cool. All right. I will see how this plays out.
Cool. All right. Well, I look forward to seeing what happens.
Thank you.
Sure. Next time.
All right. Bye.